Namaskar. 9th of August is Indigenous Peoples Day. On World Tribal Day, Indians pay respect to Adivasi culture and heritage. Today, the world is commemorating the International Day of the world's indigenous people of World Tribal Day. Every year, World Tribal Day is observed across the globe on 9th of August to promote and defend the rights of the indigenous people in the world. On this day, we honor the achievements and contributions of local communities towards the prosperity of a nation, and we celebrate indigenous cultures. On August 9, 1982, the first meeting of the United Nations Working Group on Indigenous People took place in Geneva, Switzerland. The theme of 2021 is We Leave No One Behind. Indigenous people are calls for a new social contract. Indigenous peoples and calls for a new social contract. To commemorate this day, the official Twitter handle of United Nations Development wrote, Indigenous peoples are unique. Today and every day, let us raise awareness about their culture, tradition, language, knowledge, and heritage to protect their rights across the world. Thank you.
আজ 9ই আগস্ট বিশ্ব আদিবাসী দিবস। বিশ্বের সমগ্র আদিবাসী জনজাতিকে শ্রদ্ধা জ্ঞাপন করে আমার কবিতা বিশ্ব আদিবাসী দিবস পাঠ করছি। 5টি মহাদেশের বহু দেশে ছড়িয়ে রয়েছে হাজার হাজার আদিবাসী জনজাতি। প্রায় 35 কোটি জনসংখ্যায় পরিচয় তাদের আদিবাসী কিংবা উপজাতি। তাদের অধিকার নিয়ে রয়েছে তর্ক বিতর্ক জাতীয় ও আন্তর্জাতিক স্তরে। সমাজ সংস্কৃতি অর্থনীতি ও আদিবাসী জাতিসত্তার পরিচয় ঘিরে আদিবাসীদের রয়েছে আলাদা রীতিনীতি ও মূল্যবোধ, রয়েছে আলাদা সমাজ সংস্কৃতি। অনেক অবিচার শোষণের পর ওরা চেয়েছিল অধিকারের স্বীকৃতি। জাতিসংঘের সাধারণ পরিষদে 23শে ডিসেম্বর 1994 সালে 9ই আগস্ট বিশ্ব আদিবাসী দিবস পালনের মহান স্বীকৃতি অবশেষে মেলে। ভূমি ও প্রাকৃতিক সম্পদের অধিকার, আদিবাসীদের নিজস্ব সাংস্কৃতিক পরিচয়, সুস্থভাবে বেঁচে থাকা ও নাগরিক মর্যাদার দাবিতে 9ই আগস্ট এই দিবসটি বিশ্বব্যাপী পালিত হয়। নমস্কার।
National Day of World Indigenous People Day is celebrated on August 9 every year. The day is celebrated to spread awareness about the indigenous population around the world and to also protect their rights. The International Day was established by the United Nations General Assembly and was first marked in 1994. The date was selected to honor 9th August 1982, the first day of the very first UN human rights body established to deal with indigenous people rights. The term indigenous peoples is used in a generic sense to refer to a distinct, vulnerable social and cultural group possessing these characteristics: self-identification, collective attachment to geographically distinct habitats, customary cultural, economic, social or political institutions, and an indigenous language. Indigenous knowledge is a subset of local knowledge which is based on practices and it is specific to a place, but it is the result of the sustained interaction of indigenous people with an environment over generation. The word indigenous was first used officially by the United Nations in 2002. According to Marlin B. Castellano, it is evolved from 3 sources: traditional knowledge, empirical knowledge, and revealed knowledge. Well, revealed knowledge, that like indigenous knowledge is sometimes revealed through dreams, visions, and intuitions. Sometimes knowledge is received as a gift at the moment of need. Sometimes it manifests itself as a sense that the time is right. Well, empirical knowledge. Indigenous people knowledge develops through the careful observation of the connections and relationships of living beings with one another and their environment. Empirical indigenous knowledge is ecological. It is a cumulative body of knowledge, practice, and belief evolving by adaptive process. Well, traditional knowledge, indigenous people's knowledge, skills, and practices that are developed, sustained, and carried forward from generation to generation. Traditional knowledge is a living chronicle of the origins, trajectories, and achievements of the indigenous people. It is a record of indigenous peoples' allegiance to their ancestral land. National Day of World Indigenous People Day is celebrated on August 9 every year. The day is celebrated to spread
Impact of COVID-19 on indigenous people. The pandemic poses a grave health threat to indigenous peoples around the world. Indigenous communities already experience poor access to healthcare, significantly higher rates of communicable and non-communicable diseases, lack of access to essential services, sanitation, etc. Likewise, most nearby local medical facilities, if and when there are any, are often under-equipped and understaffed. Even when indigenous people are able to access healthcare services, they can face stigma and discrimination. A key factor is to ensure these services and facilities are provided in the indigenous languages and as appropriate to the specific situation of the indigenous peoples. As the number of the COVID-19 infection rises worldwide, as well as the high mortality rates among the certain vulnerable groups within underlying health condition, data on the rate of infection in indigenous peoples are either not yet available or not recorded by ethnicity. As lockdown continue in numerous countries with no timeline in the sight, indigenous peoples who already face food insecurity as the result of the loss of their traditional lands and territories confront ever graver challenges in access to food. With the loss of traditional livelihoods, which are often land based, many indigenous peoples who work in traditional occupation and subsistence economics or in the informal sector will adversely affected by the pandemics. The situation of the indigenous women who are often the main providers of food and nutrition to their families is ever graver. Yet, indigenous peoples are seeking their own solution to this pandemic.